Hey, loungers. I hope everybody's doing well this evening. Listen, guys, I have a few things that I want to get into this evening in regards to the Carlee Smollett. Okay. I have changed her name to Carlee Smollett. Okay. Even though she's Carlee Russell. And I want to talk about those things and the press conference that happened this evening with the police. Okay. In Hoover. And I also want to compare this with the Tawana Brawley case back in '87, where this was a real serious situation that took place. And it was very similar to what we're seeing today and how the outcome came from what happened with Tawana and what's happening with Carlee. Okay. I want you guys to know that I am very angry with Carlee. I've said that earlier. The video that I made went viral. Shout out to everybody that looked at the video that is giving me pushback on that. That's also giving me commentary on that and that is talking about it. Okay. I haven't gotten much pushback. I think I got maybe one comment that was pushback. Everything else was absolutely in agreement. Okay. And it's because of the facts that are coming forth about this situation. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about this tonight. We're going to talk about Tawana Brawley and what happened with that situation back in 1987. And we're also going to talk about this situation today and how these types of situations set us back hundreds of years, okay, as Black people. And we have to be unapologetic about talking about these things, okay? So I really appreciate everybody that will come in and check out the show. Definitely everybody that's already in the building and everybody that will catch the replay. But we are definitely going to get into all these hot topics and everything that happened, everything that was said in the press conference and what is going on now. Okay, so make sure you guys sit back and relax. Go ahead and grab you some libations or whatever, because we are going to enjoy this show. Okay, and I appreciate everybody for being in the building. Shout out to the beautiful Bernice. I appreciate you for being in. And Ray Triggs, I appreciate you as well. The bestie, appreciate you for being in the building. And definitely thank you for that. Yes, that video was awesome. And I'll tell you guys that there's times where I just talk from the heart, okay? And everything comes out. And those are the videos that go viral, okay? Those are the videos that everybody wants to see, everybody wants to talk about. And I definitely appreciate that, you know? I want that to be said to our sector just for a second, and then I'll move on. You know, there are times where you will be talking about a trending topic, and everybody and everything is going to jump into your chat. Everybody's going to jump into your comment section. And, you know, I understand, you know, we protect one another. We make sure that everybody's good. But, you know, sometimes there are times where it calls for us to be able to expand and talk about things that are beyond our sector, you know, and there are people that are going to jump out of the clouds and speak about these things. And I want everybody to be kind of, you know, welcoming to those people and just understand that, you know, even though we understand that our sector is very small and that, you know, we love each other and that, you know, we might fight back and forth and we're going to protect each other. There are people that are going to drop down and talk about these things because it is a trending topic. Okay. And so I want everybody to understand that, especially those that aren't content creators that really don't get it, you know, that does happen. Okay. And I just wanted that to be said. And I do appreciate all of you and all the support I get. But I need you guys to kind of lean up, you know, a little bit on the people that come in, because different times I've talked about different situations. And I've had many of people that have subscribed to the channel and also do drop down out of the clouds and don't even subscribe, but they like what I'm talking about. So I need you guys to be a little bit more welcoming to those people, okay? And I appreciate that from the rip. Now, let's go ahead and get into these conversations because I think this shit is crazy. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is what happened with Carlee earlier, okay? Well, actually, I really want to talk about what happened with Tawana Vincenia Brawley. Okay. And I want you guys to understand that story because there's not many of you that may understand that story, especially if you're not from the East Coast or if you don't quite remember from this time or if you're not old enough to remember. Okay. I happened to be a little girl at the time when this happened, but I do know about it. Okay. I heard about it over the years, but I didn't know much. Okay. So there are people that are loungers that are a little bit older than me. They were teenagers or so forth at the time, and they have heard of this story. And so they are able to substantiate exactly what happened with Tawana Brawley. Okay. And I just want to talk about this real quick because this got national attention as well. This got a lot of information, and a lot of people were looking at this, and it kind of had the same effect that this Carlee situation is having now. Maybe a little bit different now because we have social media, we have the internet and different things that are available to us that weren't necessarily available at that time. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this story. And make sure you guys hit the like button on the way in. And then we'll get into how this correlates with Carlee's story today. Okay. So Tawana Vincenia Brawley was born on December 15th, 1971. And she is an African-American woman from New York who gained notoriety in November 1987 at the age of 15 when she accused 4 white men of kidnapping and R-wording her over a 4-day period. On November 28, 1987, Brawley was found in a trash bag after having been missing for 4 days from her home in Wappingers Falls, New York. She had racial slurs written on her body and was covered in feces. Brawley accused 4 white men of having R-worded her. The charges received widespread national attention in part because of the appalling condition in which she had been left, her young age, and her professional status of the persons she accused of the crime, including police officers and a prosecuting attorney. Brawley's advisors, Al Sharpton, Alton Maddox, and C. Vernon Mason also helped in bringing in the case to national prominence. After hearing evidence, a grand jury concluded in October 1988 that Brawley had not been the victim of a forcible sexual assault and that she herself may have created the appearance of such an attack. Steve Pargonis, the New York prosecutor whom Bradley had accused as being of one of her assailants, later successfully sued Brawley and her 3 advisors for defamation. Brawley received considerable support from the African American community. Some academics have suggested that Brawley was victimized by biased reporting that had credited racial stereotypes. The mainstream media's coverage drew heated criticism from the African American press and from many Black leaders who professed to believe the teenager and her narratives. The grand jury's conclusions decreased support for Brawley and her advisors. Brawley's family have continued to assert that the allegations were true. Doesn't this sound familiar? With Carlee and her mother, right? And, her father, who's been quite quiet, but the mother has been very, very, vocal in this situation. So let's go ahead and continue with the origins of the case. Now, on November 28, 1987, Tawana Brawley, who had been missing for 4 days from her home in Wappingers Falls, New York, was found seemingly unconscious and unresponsive, lying in a garbage bag several feet from an apartment where she had once lived. Her clothing was torn and burned, her body smeared with feces. She was taken to an emergency room where the words KKK, nigger, Nigger, and bitch, bitch, were discovered written on her torso with charcoal. A detective from the Sheriff's Juvenile and Aid Bureau, among others, was summoned to interview Brawley, but she remained unresponsive. The family requested a Black officer, which the police department was able to provide. Brawley, described as having an extremely spacey look on her face, communicated with the officer with nods of the head, shrugs of the shoulder, and written notes. The interview lasted 20 minutes, during which she uttered only one word, neon, Neon. Through gestures and writing, however, she indicated that she had been R-worded repeatedly in a wooded area by 6 white men, at least one of whom she said was a police officer. A S-assault kit was administered, and police began to build a case. Brawley provided no names or descriptions of her assailants. She later told others that there had been no R word, only other kinds of S abuse. Forensic tests found no evidence of sexual assault of any kind. There was no evidence of exposure to elements which would have been expected in a victim held for several days in the woods at a time when the temperature dropped below freezing at night. Now, let's talk about the public response and what happened with this and how Al Sharpton got involved, okay? The initial public response to Brawley's story was mostly sympathetic by Bill Cosby, y'all, okay, who offered a reward of $25,000 for information on the case, while Don King pleaded $100,000 towards Brawley's education. In December 1987, more than 1,000 people, including the Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, marched through the streets of Newburgh, New York, in support of Brawley. Brawley's claims in case captured headlines across the country. Public rallies were held denouncing the incident when civil rights activist Al Sharpton, with attorneys Alton Maddox and C. Vernon Mason, began handling Brawley's public publicity. The case quickly became highly controversial. Sharpton, Maddox, and Mason generated a national media sensation. The three said the officials all the way up to the state government were trying to cover up defendants in the case because they were white. They further suggested that the KKK, the Irish Republican Army, and the Mafia had conspired with the U.S. government in alleged cover-up. Harry Chris Jr., a police officer who committed suicide shortly after the period when Brawley was allegedly held captive, became a suspect in the case. Stephen Pagonis, an assistant district attorney in Dutchess County, New York, attempted to establish an alibi for Chris, stating that he had been with Chris during the period of time. Sharpton, Maddox, and Mason then said that Chris and Pagonis were two of the R words. Okay, y'all know what R word means. They also accused Pagonis of being a racist. Based on Chris' suicide note, the New York Times reported that he killed himself because his girlfriend ended their relationship shortly before his death and because he was upset that he was unable to become a state trooper. The main media's coverage drew heated criticism from the African American press and leaders for his treatment of the teenager. They cited that the leaking and publication of photos taken of her at the hospital and the revelation of her name despite her being underage. In addition, critics were concerned that Brawley had been left in the custody of her mother, stepfather, and advisors rather than being given protection by the state. In an opinion piece in the New York Times, Martha Miles and Richard L. Madden wrote, "State law provides that if a child appears to have been sexually molested, then the Child Protective Services Agency is supposed to take jurisdiction and custody of that child." Now, Tawana Bradley was 15 at the time of the incident. If that had been done early on, the agency would have been given her psychiatric attention and preserved evidence of the R word. Sharpton's former aide, Perry McKinnon, said that Sharpton, Maddox, and Mason were unconcerned with Brawley and were using the case to take over the town, as he had heard Sharpton say that the case could make him and Brawley's other advisors the biggest N-words in New York. In June 1988, at the height of the controversy surrounding the case, a poll showed a gap of 34% points between blacks, 51%, and whites, 85%, on the question of whether Brawley was lying. Now, let's go into the grand jury hearings on this case. Under the authority of New York State Attorney General Robert Abrams, a grand jury was called to hear evidence. On October 6, 1988, the grand jury released its 170-page report that included Brawley that had been abducted, assaulted, R-worded, and sodomized, as Brawley and her advisors said. The report further concluded that the allegations against Pagones were false and had no basis in fact. Before issuing the report, the grand jury heard from 180 witnesses, saw 250 exhibits, and recorded more than 6,000 pages of testimony. In the decision, the grand jury noted that problems with Brawley's story. Among these were the R-kit rate results, which did not indicate a sexual assault. Additionally, despite saying that she had been captive outdoors for days, Brawley was not suffering from hypothermia, Brawley was not suffering from hypothermia, was well nourished, and appeared to have brushed her teeth recently. Despite her clothing being charred, there were no burns on her body. Although a shoe she was wearing was cut through, Brawley had no injuries to her foot. The racial epithets written on her were upside down, which led to the suspicion that Brawley had written the words. Testimony from her schoolmates indicate that she had attended a local party during the time of her supposed abduction. One witness claimed to have observed Brawley's climbing into the garbage bag. The feces on her body were identified as coming from her neighbor's dog. Brawley never testified despite a subpoena ordering her to do so. On June 6, 1988, Tawana's mother, Glenda Brawley, was sentenced to 30 days in prison and fined $250 for contempt of court for refusing to testify at the grand jury hearing. She evaded arrest by hiding in churches, which the police failing to arrest her, arguing it would lead to violence. The Brawley family then fled New York State, traveling around the country for several months before settling in Virginia Beach. Now, I'm going to put a link to that story in my description box because I want you guys to be able to go back and take a look at that story and how closely similar that story is to what we're looking at today with Carlee Smollett Russell. Okay, I am absolutely disgusted with what I knew this morning and what I know now after listening to the police and their press conference in regards to this. And now I'm going to read that to you guys, and then we'll get into the similarities between the two. So police and officials in Hoover, Alabama provided an update Wednesday on the mysterious disappearance of 25-year-old Carlee Russell. Russell vanished last Thursday night from the side of an interstate after telling 911 she saw a toddler in a diaper on the side of the road. And I'm just going to let you guys know there is, in fact, a 911 call. That 911 call has been released, and now everybody has heard it. I'll put a link to it in my description box. I'm just not going to play it, but I will put a link to it. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard it by now. So now, in an interview, Russell's parents said that she was not in a quote-unquote good state when she returned home, and that they believed that she was quote-unquote fighting for her life while missing. Hoover Police Captain Chief, and I can't say really his name, Captain Keith Zebella, I can't really say his name, guys, began the Wednesday news conference by stressing that the police on the case was not finished. He definitely let us know. He had a pink jacket on, and he let us know, honey, this is not done, okay? And that's what he said. Now, he said, keep in mind, this is still an ongoing investigation, and there may be questions that we cannot answer, he said. Now, Mayor Frank V. Bricado said that the vanishing of Russell sent fear and panic throughout the community and the state. Bricado said that it's important to share an update to the community so that we can be at ease. And I agree with him, because we out here looking for a toddler. We out here looking for, an abductor, somebody that looks like Pennywell, out here, got a whole red hair looking like the clown, from It, okay? Yeah, that's what she described when she said that this guy took her. She described Pennywell from It, okay? So either way, we need to find out if Pennywell is real, okay? And if he really out here abducting kids and whatnot and stuff, we need to know what's going on, okay? So either way, this is what happened. So Police Chief Nicholas Derzis, I think that's his name, said officers have been working since Russell's return to determine whether she works. Now, due to public fear this case has generated, we owe the public to share what we have learned. And I agree that they most definitely do, okay? Especially when we're talking about children, when we're talking about women being abducted, Black women being abducted and all this stuff, okay? By niggas that look like Pennywell, whatnot. Yeah, we need to find out, okay? So listen to this. The chief said surveillance video shows Russell concealing a bathrobe and toilet paper while leaving work on Thursday night, okay? Now, as y'all know, she works at this spa, okay? Well, she was working at this spa. So she took a bathrobe and some toilet paper from work, okay? And this is on surveillance. The chief also said that he said that she went and ordered some food from a place called Taziki's, okay? And that is the Mediterranean food. So allegedly, she really did go and go get some Mediterranean food, okay? And then brought also some granola bars and some Cheez-Its, y'all, okay, from Target. Now, y'all know that she was talking about that Pennywell done gave her Cheez-Its, okay? And they painted her nails and gave her Cheez-Its, and his girlfriend, the woman that was with Pennywell, gave her Cheez-Its and all this stuff. Yeah. So apparently it was Carlee that bought the damn Cheez-Its, okay? And she bought the granola bars, okay? So she did this at Target, okay? And then she went on and then went over to the interstate. Actually, she stayed in the parking lot for some time. She stayed over in the parking lot for about 20, 30 minutes or so. And then she proceeded over to the interstate. When she got to the interstate, she gave a call to 911. And that is when she decided to tell them that there was a white young toddler that was missing and that he was on the side of the road, okay? And that she was watching him. Now, keep in mind, guys, she done drove 6 football fields. I want y'all to think about a football field. 600 yards, okay? 6 football fields from where this alleged child was at, okay? And she told the police she was following the child. She said, yeah, the child, I'm watching this child and I'm just driving and I'm just going. That ain't what she said, but that's basically what happened, okay? And so the cops, the person that was on the 911 call, they were assuming that she was still in the vicinity of the child, okay? She drove 6 football fields from the place that she dialed 911 to the place that she ended up ending the call with 911. Now, I do have questions for 911, okay? I'm going to say this. Why the hell did 911 hang up with her? And even if she did hang up, why didn't they call back? And why don't they have proof of them calling back, right? Now, we're going to move on because they acting like, they just said, just stay on the line until the police get there, okay? We then saw her get out the car. We saw her walk around the back. We saw her go to the front, to the side of the car, on the right-hand side of the car. And then we saw her dart off into the woods. If you blink, you miss it, okay? But yeah, she went off into the side of the woods, okay? So the officials did play that call in its entirety. She did not sound nervous, afraid, concerned, or anything. She just sounded like a regular person. Yeah, my name's Carlee Russell. She was answering questions like a normal person. She didn't sound drunk. She didn't sound high. She didn't sound like anything, just a regular old black girl from Alabama. Okay, that's what she sounded like to me. Okay. And yeah, so they played that. And then the Raises, who is related, who reiterated that Russell's call was only reported of a child on the side of the road. He also added that no children have been reported missing. Okay, so there's no kids that have been reported missing. There's no toddler, no nothing. And as y'all have seen from the video, there is no damn toddler running around on the grass, running around on the road, nothing. Okay, nobody else stopped. Nobody else even seemed concerned about her car sitting on the side of the road. Okay, now he also said that, yeah, I told y'all that she traveled about 600 yards. She traveled 6 football fields, okay, which was about 600 yards each, okay, and then kept moving. So yeah, they said that 6 football fields, to think that a toddler could travel 6 football fields without getting in the road, without crying, it's pretty hard to grasp that. Okay, and I agree. Okay. Now he also said that her wig, her cell phone, her purse were in or near the vehicle when the responders arrived. Okay, and we did see on the video when the cops actually showed up. It was about 4 or 5 minutes later. But the snacks from the Target that this bitch bought, okay, well, the peanuts and the chips and shit that she bought from Target, they was nowhere to be found in that car, around the car, or nothing. But yet the goddamn wig, the phone, all this shit all over this place. Okay. But the peanuts was with her. Okay. Yeah. How about that? So for 2 days, a whole bunch of tips reported, and a bunch of people just kind of, checked back and started looking around and all kinds of stuff and everything else. Until she returned home on foot on Saturday night. Okay. And according to Darius, Russell told detectives that she had got out of her vehicle to check on the child, and a man, quote unquote, came up from the woods, forced her in a car, and then she woke up in a trailer of a semi-truck. She claimed that she had heard the voice of this woman. She heard the baby crying and all this other stuff, but she never saw this woman. But then she turned around and said the next day when she woke up, the woman was feeding her cheeses, right? Like, you know what? I'm over this bitch, okay? At the end of the day, we know she lying, okay? We know she lying, and the police know she lying too. And I want to talk about particular things about African-American women and African-American children, okay? And how we have gone missing over the years, and how we have fought over this for many, many moons. And we don't get nothing, no help over any of this. I pulled this up from the NAACP, okay? And this is missing African American women and children in the United States of America. And I just want to talk about this and how big this is and how much bigger this is than I thought, okay? But we're definitely going to talk about it. And we're gonna name some names. Okay, so the first one I want to name is Georgia Lee Moses. Okay, Georgia Lee Moses was born and raised back in a time where these kinds of things were not prominent, right? But she was a little girl in California, and she had been, well, actually, she didn't start off in California. She went there over time. Her mother was a schizophrenic. Okay. And she was a person that dealt with mental illness and that was untreated, apparently, for many years. Georgia's mother got involved with a sex abuser, okay, who had been convicted of child sex abuse, and was released from jail. I don't know why they released them, okay, but was released from jail. And she took him into her house, being a person that wasn't very stable, okay, and didn't have the help that she really needed. And so she had 2 daughters. She had Georgia and she had another daughter. And Georgia's story is real big, and there's not many people that hear about her, but I'm going to talk about Georgia real quick. And then we'll go on to Tamala and then also to Nefertiti. Okay. But we're going to talk about Georgia because Georgia was 12 years old when this happened. Okay. And Georgia was living in her house with her father, well, with her mother and her stepfather. And Georgia's stepfather went into her bedroom one night. And this is all that has been recalled from her sister that was 7 years old at the time. She's now in her 40s. Okay. And she talks about what happened with Georgia and how Georgia was in her bedroom and the stepfather went in the room and he locked the door. She remembers distinctly hearing the door locking. And she remembers there would be a bunch of tussling going on. And she remembers Georgia coming out that room and saying, I can't live here anymore. I will never live here again. I don't want to be around this man. I'm kind of quoting what she said. And the sister was kind of afraid. Okay. She didn't want her sister to go. She didn't want her sister to leave. She looked up to her 12-year-old sister. She loved her. She protected her. She did everything for her. And she wanted to make sure that her sister didn't leave. But her sister left. And she told her she can't do this no more. After her sister left, the abuse started with the 7-year-old. Okay. And, she started being sexually abused and different things by this stepfather. Turns out that a few years later, Child Protective Services came to the house. Okay. And because of the fact that Georgia was kind of missing, and they didn't really know I'll say this. Let me go back. They didn't know what was going on with the child. Okay. They knew that there was something going on with this little girl because the teachers at school were talking about it. Okay. So Child Protective Services came to the house and they looked into her story. And she wasn't worried about what was happening with her stepfather. She was only 8 years old at the time, 7 or 8. So she had no idea that he was molesting her. All she knew was, yeah, this guy's coming in, he's hurting me, but what about my sister? Like, y'all haven't heard from my sister. I'm looking for her. She's missing. She hasn't been home in like months, and she said that she was going to come check on me, and she hasn't come back. And that's when the state found out about Georgia. Okay, so they ended up looking into Georgia's situation, not realizing that there was a second child. Okay, when they found Georgia, and when they realized what happened to Georgia, they realized that Georgia had been trafficked. Okay, Georgia had been placed in certain situations in California, in LA, where she called these people her family. Okay, these were her family. She had to take care of her family. And come to find out, these were older men that she was, quote unquote, taking care of and being trafficked. Georgia was found dead a few years later, and her case has never been solved to this day. They don't know who killed Georgia. Okay, they know that she's dead. They know that she was a child that went missing and that she was trafficked after, she left a situation that what she felt was worse at home. Okay. And it's funny. It's not funny, but it's crazy because Georgia was about to be taken out of that situation. There was a family member that was willing to take the girls and take them back to the East Coast, where they were originally born. And they lost contact with them. And that's how they weren't able to bring them back. And so Georgia was not able to get rescued. But there was a time where Georgia was going to be rescued. And because of the lost contact, she got lost and she died. Okay. She was never, the situation that happened with her was never recovered to this day. Okay. And this happened back in 86 or 87 or something like that. Okay. Tamala Horsford is another woman that was killed a few years ago back in, back a few years ago. And she was there with a few white friends. And there's a whole lot of controversy around what actually happened to her, right? All we know is that there was a lot of cops around her that night. There were a lot of other people that are questionable around her that night. But what happened to her was never solved. And she's still out here. We're still trying to solve her case. And we have no answers on what happened to her, even though she was a mother, even though she was a wife, and everything else. Okay. And then there's a Nefertiti trader. I want to talk about Nefertiti. Okay. Nefertiti is from Delaware, which is where I'm from. And I did a story on her a couple years ago because Nefertiti was lost about 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago now. And she had children. Okay. Her children are grown now. But at the time, she had children. And there was a person of interest that came about that was a neighbor at the time. I still can go to that neighborhood right now. Like I can literally drive to that neighborhood within 5 minutes. And I could be at the house that she lived in. And I believe that neighbor still lives there. And yeah, she's missing. Okay. She had a friend or a neighbor allegedly that saw her or that heard her that night yelling, right? There's also other neighbors, and this has been featured on other shows online and different things like that. But either way, there was other neighbors that saw people a man coming out of her house, that saw a person carrying what looked like a big ass, trash bag or something and taking it to their car, and different things like that. And her car, it was her car that they took her to. Her vehicle, her phone, nothing has been uncovered to this day. And it's been 8 or 9 years, guys. Okay. That Nefertiti has been gone. I think it's been longer. I have to look at that, but it's been at least 9 years. Okay. And yeah, so these are names of 3 women, okay, that I can talk about that have been missing, that are Black women, okay, that have a reason for us to be looking into, okay, and have us to be looking at, but nobody cares. Nobody is looking into it. No cold cases are open. No, nothing is open on these 3 women, okay? While we got this bitch out here talking about she was, taken, and it never happened. Let's also talk about missing African American women and children in the United States of America. And we're going to read this from the NAACP. Whereas, according to the National Crime Information Center, nearly 40% of those who have disappeared are often Black. However, many are alleging that the media mostly focuses on white women who have disappeared as opposed to African American women and children. Whereas the Black and Missing Foundation reported in 2010 that a total of 273,985 minorities were reported missing in the United States out of 692,944 for all races. That's almost half. That's almost half. They also report that most women disappear in the United States of New York, Georgia, North Carolina, Maryland, and Florida. Whereas hundreds of African American families are left with painful details of wondering what has happened to their loved ones. Many Black women and children have been missing for decades. Whereas, as currently, more than 64,000 Black women remain missing across the United States. I need Carlee and her fucking mother to hear this. More than 64,000 Black women remain missing across the United States. Whereas, despite representing 12.85% of the population, Black Americans accounted for more than nearly 226,000, or 34% of all missing persons reported, according to the FBI's National Crime Information Center. The comparison with other racial groups is unfavorable. Whites and Hispanics are combined in 80% of the population, but account for 60% of missing persons. This is serious. When you break down the numbers by age, the Black and Missing Foundation reports that 37% of missing minors and 28% of missing adults in 2013 were Black. No fewer than 270,000 minorities have gone missing since 2010, 135,000 of whom were Black, and 64,000 were Black women and girls missing nationwide, according to the Black and Missing Foundation report. According to the National Crime Information Center, there were 170,899 missing Black children under the age of 18 in the United States in 2016. How the missing reports were handled by the media definitely raises concern. Critics citing a stark racial divide in news coverage of missing reports of African Americans, in particular African American women and children. Therefore, it be resolved that this resolution requests the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People research new and recent updates on African American women and children who are missing. It be further resolved that the NAACP hosts town hall meetings between lawmakers, law enforcement, Justice Department officials, and child advocate groups on missing Black women and children. It be further resolved that the National Association of Colored People insists that all media coverage be equal, regardless of race, encourage that their names become prominent fixtures on Twitter, their names get hashtags on trending topics, nationwide manhunts on or search parties take place. Interrupt TV programs with breaking news, and that African American women and children's families be treated fairly in their time of the greatest need. This part right here, y'all, this that came forth from the NAACP sickens me probably the most over this situation. It's the fact that this Black prominent family in Alabama, out of all places, felt that it'd be okay to play with us like this, with these staggering numbers of people that are missing and that are lost. I'm hurt. I don't know about anybody else and how they feel. You know, I'm not really looking for anybody to give me accolades on this or nothing. All I know is that I have 3 Black daughters and 3 Black sons. And I would do everything in my soul. If something happened to them, I would do everything in my soul to find them. And for God's sake, I have done everything in my soul, and they can attest to this. I have done everything in my soul to protect them from such things. So I can't imagine if they lied about some shit like this. I can't imagine if they put us 100 years back over some shit like this. I can't imagine it. I think I taught them way better than this. I think I taught them and I gave them way better. I might not have been the best parent, but I gave them way better than this. So they know the impact that this has on our people. So they understand what really happens. I know, I hear y'all. I've gotten many comments today, hundreds of comments today on my video from earlier. And I appreciate every single one of you. Most of you agree. There's some, every here and there, that feel like we should be quiet about this. We shouldn't talk about it. And I get it, right? See, we're so used to trying to protect our image and protect, our kind and all this stuff that we can't even be fucking honest with each other when you're wrong. At the end of the day, this is a slap in our face for every single man and child, every single woman, every Black woman that has been lost. And we don't know anything. I talked about a little girl earlier. I didn't mention her because I don't know her name. But she was found this year. It was through her father's DNA. And it was because they just didn't know who she was. They didn't know. I said 30 years. It was 20 years. They didn't know who she was because her mother had given her up when she was young. Her mom was young and she gave her up to her own father. She gave her up to the child's father. The child's father was older. He was in the military. She felt like he would be able to take care of her much better. So she gave her up. She had her own issues, right? We can talk shit about the mom and everything, but either way, she gave her child to her father, who she thought would have actually taken care of her. None of us think that the father of our children would hurt our children, right? We never think that until it happens. Yeah. She didn't keep in touch because the father wasn't keeping in touch. And even though I do think that the mom could have done more, right? I do think that. Yeah, I think that. But the bottom line is she didn't. She trusted her baby dad. This man and his wife, his monstrous bitch-ass wife, killed that child, abused that child, and killed that child and left her. And when they found that child, she had tattered clothing, a pink shirt. She had been dead for years when they found her. They ended up giving her a DNA test with newfound information that we have now and how DNA has come to where it is now. And they were able to match her with her father, who was in the military. Once they questioned him 20 years later, and his wife, they were able to confirm that the both of them had abused and neglected this child. They never took her to a doctor, never took her anywhere, never had her registered in school, nothing. She was in one daycare. It was one church-like daycare over the summer. And at that daycare, they didn't do any real registration. They didn't take any real information, and which is unfortunate. And the people failed her, that little girl. And they had one picture of her. And that picture that the cops were able to come up with, as a sketch of this skull and of this body. It was one teacher that came forth and said, "I remember that little girl." She couldn't remember her name, but she knew what she looked like and she knew who she was. And she did say that she had this messed up eye and she couldn't explain her eye. And come to find out, that little girl was so abused. She was so withdrawn. She was so quiet. She didn't speak to other kids. She didn't do anything. And that church also failed that little girl because they didn't look into that further. They didn't They didn't check into that, you know. Shout out to those who are ones who will report some mistreatment of children, right? That's important. It's very important. But either way, nobody reported that little girl. And then she was withdrawn. They never heard from her no more. A couple years later, her body turns up in the woods with only a pink shirt, a tattered pink shirt. They named her after the town because they couldn't find her. They couldn't find anybody, and they couldn't understand why nobody was reporting this little girl missing. 20 years later, they got that DNA from her dad. And it turns out he was the one that killed her. He was the one that hurt that baby. His wife knew about it. She partook in it too. They're both locked up. But it took 20 fucking years. It took them 20 years to find him. It don't take that long for these white girls. And I'm not saying that to be hurtful or hateful or anything. It just don't. It don't take that long for them to all come out the woodwork for the white girls. But for the black girls, it takes us 20, 30 years for them to even care, for them to even look into it. It takes 3 or 4 detectives years later to finally pick it up. When people like Gabby Bettino and them, when they went missing, a grown-ass woman, everybody came out the woodwork looking for her. They had all the dogs, all the FBI out looking for this white girl. But when our black girls go missing, when our black boys go missing, they don't give a fuck. They don't care. It takes us. It takes our strength. It takes our people to find us. There's sometimes where us finding us don't even make national news. It don't even make nothing because nobody knows because it's only us. Look at the magnitude of that. Let's talk about it. That's what happens. This is why I am so angry at Carlee Russell and her mother. I'm so angry. I can't understand. I can't understand for anything why you think this is okay. It wasn't okay when Tawana did this back in 87 and allowed, even though I don't fuck with the police for various reasons, but she allowed a cop to murk herself over this. Some shit that clearly, mentally, he wasn't together for and ready for. But that's a spiritual battle that she got to fight now. Because she lied. Mental illness is real, y'all. But what I won't fucking do is blame this on mental illness. I won't do that. I won't be the one to do that. I'm not. I've seen mental illness. I've seen it in my own family. And I've dealt with it. And I put it front and center. And I fought it head on like a G. That is not an excuse. It's not. If you have mental illness, if there's something going on, it's up to you to fight it. It's up to you to treat it. You will not put that on the black community. You will not put that on us. especially us Black women. You must go get the help you need for yourself so you don't set us back hundreds of years. I need you to remember what Black women have experienced. Fucking what Black families have experienced over the decades, over the centuries, from white supremacy and what has happened to our people. I need you to understand the depth of this, and that our selfish ways cannot get in the way of our people and where we are going and what we are trying to accomplish. You can choose not to be on the side of us. You can choose to disagree and say, yeah, you know, I don't even know what you would say. All I know is this is the time for every single one of us to be on one accord. Being on one accord means being fucking honest. If something is wrong, it's wrong. And you need to speak on it. We need to be the first ones to speak to our people about what's wrong. There shouldn't be nobody else that comes up and speaks for us. It's us. We protect ours. And we also discipline ours. We put ours in our place and in their place so we can avoid anybody else doing it. Mothers, fathers, it starts with you. Being honest with our children, being honest with our families, being honest with ourselves. If there's a mental issue, if there's a mental illness, it is your responsibility to handle that, so it don't fold out into all this bullshit that all of us are fighting now. Because no matter what you say and no matter what you do, I really honestly feel that this is a setback for all Black people. All Black women, the least protected on the planet. This is a setback. And we must fight forward to not let this happen again. And that means putting our foot down on our people first and setting the record straight and being honest with each other. And that's just it. I appreciate all of you for coming in the building, for listening to my rant, for listening to my pain. This is painful, y'all. It's painful for Black women. It's painful for Black families because some of us have fought the real fucking fight. You understand? We have really fought this fight. We really believe in the liberation of our people. And when we see shit like this, it sets us the fuck back. I'm disgusted. But at the end of the day, all I can be is a help, right? I can be a voice. I can be the one that says, let's do the right thing. Let's figure this out. We can't let this keep happening. This cannot happen again. We cannot wait another 20 years and this happens again. We don't have the room. We don't have the space. We don't have the opportunity. We cannot do this again. We cannot let this happen again. So what do we do, people? What do we do? Starts with us. Starts with you. Look inside, right? Let's figure out what we can do to fix what's inside so that we can fix what's happening in our homes and be honest about it so we don't let this continue into the future. That means you have to be proactive in the lives of your families. You have to. That's one of the things I pride myself on. Pride myself on that. That I made sure that all my kids were in each other's fucking life. I ain't give a fuck how they felt about it, what they wanted, y'all better know each other's business. If I die today, y'all better know what's going on in each other's life. And they do. To the point where I don't even know, right? They got their own group chat. They all know what's going on. Everybody talking. Everybody know everybody's business. And I love it. I love it. Because they also, not only do they protect one another, but they hold each other accountable. They hold each other accountable. I don't even got to no more. That's what I want to see in all of our families. And I'm not even saying that particular thing is perfect, right? It's not perfect. There's some things we can tweak and change. But it works. It works. Everybody knows everybody's shit. And everybody holds everybody accountable for their shit. They do. They do. And that's something I built. That's something I made sure happened. I think we all should be doing things like that. Making sure that we are in each other's lives. We are knowing what each other are thinking, what each other are feeling. Because sometimes we might need to be corrected. Right? And the ones that love us the most are the ones that can really help with that. So it starts in the family. It starts with you and then the family. Because we cannot let anything like this ever happen again. We can't. We can't let this happen again. We cannot let another Tawana Brawley, and another Carlee Russell happen. Even though their situations are a little bit different. You know, Tawana had a whole lot more details, right, on things. But it was still very similar because of the public reaction to what happened to Tawana and what happened to Carlee. And both reactions had an impact on the African American community. And the fact that they don't even take us serious as it is. They don't believe us as it is. They don't. They don't. I know it for a fact. I just wanted to release that, you know, and I appreciate everybody that's been tuning in to these stories and everything that I've been talking about. Make sure y'all hit the like button on the way out. Everybody that's in the building, Ray Triggs, Vici, Muslim, Stephanie Collins, I appreciate you being in the building. S. White, everybody that's in the building, I am human first. I appreciate you as well. And everybody that will catch the replay. But guys, I'm out of here. You know, I can't. But I will talk to you guys later, and I do appreciate everybody for being in the building. And peace, guys. Thank you guys again for watching.